This is Jake Pazicki with an ACT Science Data Interpretation question. Now this question is asking us to look at the table and see how the introduction of a new variable, in this case the third rope, seen here in this column, affects the forces on the other two ropes, R1 and R2. So as you can see, this diagram is a little bit confusing, but in the first trial we're supposed to ignore R3 here, so that only R1 and R2 are present. And then in the third trial, in the second trial, we're supposed to accept that they have added R3, and now we have all three ropes attached to this hanging mass. And they want to know how the addition of this third rope has changed the forces on R1 and R2. So as we always should do whenever we have a question where the answer choices are wordy or just slight variations on a theme, we should go one by one through each one to eliminate or validate each answer choice. So our first answer option is the addition of the third rope increased the force exerted on R1 and on R2. So if we look at our table, we look at trial 1 and we look where we added the third rope, what we're doing now is comparing R1 and R2 from trial 1 to trial 2. So R1, R2, so if you look at R2 for example, in trial 1, when the mass was 100 kilograms, the force in R2 was 564 kilograms. In trial 2, when the mass was 100 kilograms, same as before, the force in R2 is actually the same. You can see that. Actually, the forces on R2 are the same in trial 1 and trial 2, even with the addition of the third rope. So it seems that the addition of R3 has not actually affected R2 at all. So that is interesting to note. So we know that it actually has not affected R2 and has not increased the force. So this answer choice has to be wrong. And if we look at R1, what we see actually is that it has changed. So where there was a 100 kilogram mass in trial 1, there was 1,128 newtons was the force exerted in R1, and that is decreased to 985 newtons in trial 2. And we see that actually it has decreased for each of these subsequent force measurements, and it seems that this force R3 is actually displacing some of the force that was on R1. So we're going to note that it's moved forward. So answer choice B, the addition of the third rope increased the force exerted in R2 only. Once again, we see that R2 was actually not affected, and so that answer choice is wrong. Decrease the force exerted on R1 only, and that seems to be true because we see that R2 stays the same and that the forces decrease from trial 1 to trial 2 on R1, so we're going to accept that. That could be a possible answer. And the last one, decrease the force exerted in R1 and R2. And we see once again R2 has stayed the same, so that's not real, and our answer choice is going to be C, decrease the force exerted on R1